this section, we will talk about the type of testing. The test type is a group of activity that targets specific characteristics of our software system based on a test object. We have 4 types of testing and there are 4 goals of these 4 types. First, we evaluate the functional quality characteristic, which means does our software deliver what it should deliver or not, like completeness, correctness and appropriateness, which means that the function of system are complete, correct and appropriate to the user. Second thing is that we evaluate some non-functional quality characteristics like reliability, performance, efficiency, security, compatibility and usability. The next is we evaluate the structure or architecture of our component or system. The last saying is that we evaluate the effect of these changes are because of fixing of defect, so that we do confirmation testing, or because we change it a part of the software and this change affect other part of our software, which is regression testing. Let's start with functional testing. Functional testing involves evaluating the function that the system should perform. The functional requirements are described in our work product, like business requirement, the epics, the user story, use cases, or functional specification, but they may be undocumented. So the function are what the system should do, what are the things that our system should do. We should perform functional testing at all test level. Functional testing considers the behavior of the software, so it uses black box test design technique in order to test the behavior of our software. All I need to provide input to the software and wait for the output. I don't have to test the internal structure of the software. This type of testing is called black box testing because you just provide input and wait for the output. So the functional testing, we use black box testing to derive our test condition and the test cases. In functional testing, we may need to identify something which is called the functional coverage, which means that the percentage of functional element that we already exercise by test. So if we have 100 functions and we wrote test cases for 90 functions, this means that we have 90% functional coverage. For example, if we have traceability between the test and functional requirement, like we said, the percentage of the requirement that are addressed by testing is considered as functional coverage, and then we try to design more test cases to identify the coverage goal. Functional test design and execution need some skills, and these skills are skills in the knowledge of business problem that our software solves. So for example, if we are testing again, this means that the test should have some knowledge about the field. If we are testing a banking application, this means that our tester should have some knowledge about the business of banking field and so on. The second type is non-functional testing. Non-functional testing evaluate the characteristic of system and the software like usability, which means is our system easy to use or not, performance, efficiency or security. The ISO standard considers some quality in terms of non-functional testing. Non-functional is testing how well the software behaves. Is our system behaving in a good way or not? Non-functional testing is like functional testing. It should be performed at all test level, and also it should be done as early as possible. If we have the non-functional defect without solving them, this could be dangerous to the success of our project. Also in non-functional testing, we may use black box techniques to derive our test condition and test cases. For example, we have used a test technique which is called boundary value analysis, and this technique means that we test the system at its boundaries, so we can use this technique to test the stress testing in performance, We need to know the peak of our system, what is the maximum concurrent user, for example, that our system can deal with without problem. Non-functional testing, we have also non-functional coverage, which means that what is the percentage of non-functional elements that are exercised by our test cases. For example, if we have traceability between our test and our supported system devices for a mobile application that we want to test this application. On this case, the percentage of devices that are used in testing is considered as the functional coverage for compatibility testing. We are testing our application compatible with all these mobiles or not. In non-functional testing, the skill needed for this type of testing our knowledge about the weakness of the design of the technology. What are the ability of our software, and also we need to know the user base. What are the personas and the type of user that may use this software. The second type is white box testing. White box testing derives tests based on the system internal structure. So here we look at the internal structure of our system, whether it is a good architecture, workflow or data flow within the system. In white box testing also we have something which is called structural coverage, and this is the percentage of the code that is covered by our test cases or the percentage of any structure that we are testing. For example, in unit testing or component testing, we have something which is called code coverage. This is structural coverage in your testing. In code coverage, we test the amount of code that is tested by our test case and percentage from the whole code. We have more than one white box testing in component testing. This we will talk about in chapter 4 in test design technique. If we have white box testing in component integration testing, for example, so here white box testing is based on the interface between the components, and in this case the structural coverage is how much of this interface are tested by our test cases. In order to perform white box testing, you should have some skill. Also here these skills are the way to code is built, how data is stored, and how to use the coverage tools and the coverage techniques to know the coverage that you achieve in your software. The last type of testing is change related testing. Change related testing is done when changes are made to our system. In this type of testing, we test to confirm that the changes corrected the defect or implemented the functionality correctly, and also it did not cause any unforeseen or new defect in our system. Related testing, we have two types. We have confirmation testing, regression testing. Confirmation testing is done when defect is fixed. You find a defect and send it to the developer. He fixes the defect and send it back to you. Then you perform confirmation testing in order to make sure that a defect is solved. So in the confirmation testing, at least you must repeat the step that produce a failure which is caused by the defect. So the purpose of confirmation testing is to confirm whether the original defect has been successfully fixed or not. On the other hand, regression testing is also the type of change related testing. But in regression testing, we test the other module that may have been influenced by the change in this module. So for example, we have module A and we have solved a defect in it or change some functionality, and retesting test module A again, but in regression testing we will test all the modules that are influenced, advise a change in module. Here in regression testing we test after any type of change, whether it is a change in an environment or in a software itself. The effect that happen is called regression. That's why we perform regression testing in order to find the regression. Confirmation testing and regression testing also are done in all test levels. Especially an iterative and incremental model like Agile, changes happen a lot. We have small iteration, and at the end of each iteration there is a change to the software which require retesting and confirmation testing. Also in Internet of Things, changes happen a lot. Every day there is a update to the device and that require also regression testing and retesting. Regression test suits which are shoot and are run many times and evolve slowly. So the test condition or the test cases that we should choose to influence in our regression test suits should be stable functionality in our software. They should be seen that are not changed it frequently. That's why regression testing is a strong candidate for automation. If we are going to perform automation testing like Selenium, in this case we should use the automation, the regression, the test suite, because we will write a code and this code will be stable for a long time and evolve slowly. We can perform any test type, any test level. So the four types that we talked about: functional, non-functional testing, change related testing or architecture. All of these types can be performed at any test level in our software. For example, functional testing. We can perform functional testing to calculate internet of our code. Component integration testing, we can test the business logic between the user interface and the database. The business logic is the programming that manages this relation between the user interface and our database so this is type of functional testing in component integration testing. In system testing, we can check how account holder can apply for a line of credit. A line of credit is a type of account that we can apply for in a bank. So this is considered as a type of system testing because this is a whole scenario that you should use. System integration testing, we can check for our system interface with the internal microservices to check our account holder credit score. So you performing some functionalities on your credit card. The application that you use is connected to a microservice to check your credit score. Is there enough money to perform this transaction or not? For acceptance testing, test can be designed to test how the banker handle approving and declining the credit application. In non-functional testing, also we can perform at all the test level. In component testing, we may test performance on our code so that we test how many CPU cycles are required for a single function in our application. In component integration testing, we may perform security testing on our business logic to test if any buffer overflow happen while the data is passed from the user interface to the database. In system testing, we may test the portability for our application presentation layer. The presentation layer, there is layer number C in the OSI model which serve as the data translator for the network. In system integration testing, we may test the reliability of our system and is it robust when the microservice fail to respond to our system. At last, in acceptance testing, we may test the usability of our application to test the accessibility of the banker to some interface with people with disabilities. White box testing also may be performed at all test level. First at component testing, we may test the code to achieve 100% statement or decision coverage. In integration testing, we may test the screen in our application and how they pass data to other screen and to the business logic. In system testing, we may try to cover all the sequences of web pages that can be occurred during credit line application. The credit line application is the amount of money that can change to your credit card. In system integration testing, we may try to exercise all type of inquiry that are sent to our microservices. And at last, in acceptance testing, we may try to cover all the supports, value ranges that can be done in bank to bank transfer. Lastly, change related testing. Also, change related testing can be performed in all our test level. In our component testing, we may use automation relation testing inside our continuous integration framework. In component integration testing, we may perform testing to confirm some fix to our interfaces that is previously discovered. In system integration testing, we may re-execute all the tests for workflow in our system if any of screen of this workflow is changed. In system integration testing, we may retest our interaction with the credit scoring microservice daily through continuous deployment of our system. So each time you want to deploy our system in continuous integration and continuous deployment, we want to retest the integration our system and microservices. In acceptance testing, we may re-execute all the previously failed tests so that we make sure that these defects are solved. Example that we talked about in the combination between the test style and the test level are all applicable in our project. But you don't have to use all these type inside this level. You should only choose the applicable test type at each level. What are the type that you need in component testing integration system and acceptance testing? You should not use all the types while they are not achieving your goals and objective in our project.